Thanks, Priscilla, for that very generous introduction. But if you indulge me, I'm going to reintroduce myself and hopefully you'll find out why. So I am a human rights lawyer. Those who were here this morning had me ask a few awkward questions, and I hope they were useful questions. But I'll reintroduce myself. I'm Jacqueline Onalo, and I'm named after my paternal grandmother. My other name is Namaya, which simply means I belong to a little clan in Kenya called Bamaya, and it's part of a big tribe in Kenya called the Luya. Bamaya are famed for intelligence, for industry, for wit and confidence. Maybe mistaken for arrogance, but I'll let you be the judge of that. Bamaya girls are beautiful, and we're referred to as Namaya Malenya. And what Malenya means, it means glittery or beautiful one. But our influence is not just skin deep, to be honest, because the oracle of my clan before the introduction of Christianity was a woman, and her name was Nakabuka. And she died preserving her virginity from rapists. And so therefore in my culture, women are very, very important. At our annual wrestling championship, it said that the spirit of Nakabuka possesses the wrestlers. And therefore the wrestlers from my clan, we win all competitions. I'm sure the story of Nakabuka is just jealousy. We're excellent wrestlers. We're some of the most devout Catholics you'll find anywhere, but our local brews are banned substances, changa and busa. And that's just how it is. Twins were seen as taboo in the past, but at the moment, if you have twins, it's a blessing. You may or may not agree with me. That's a more colorful and interesting introduction as to who I am. It says a lot more than Jackie Onalo, human rights lawyer. It tells you a bit more about my African culture. So from now on, feel free to call me Namaya Malenya, the beautiful one. Don't be shy. But attempted humor to one side. The question is there any such thing as African culture? Or is it merely an amalgamation of the culture of 54 African countries with a common strand of community, hospitality, identity, education, and creativity? The second question, who is responsible for depicting our culture? Is it the Asians in Brixton or the Chinese selling all this fabulous hair? Who is responsible for that? Now, our culture is found in different things. It's in our food, our clothes, our hairstyles, our art, our music, dance, film, and this art of storytelling, both ancient and modern. And what I really want to discuss, because my main area is about leadership, is where does the leadership come in promoting, preserving, and investing in our culture? Is it individual or is it collective? And the answer, to me, it's my personal opinion, lies in a popular leadership premise. The question is why, as opposed to what do we do? And so if you ask me why, I'll say African culture is rich and it's diverse. It's beautiful and it's priceless. It's something I'm very, very, very proud of. And therefore I have an interest in being part of it and sharing it with those around me. And how do I do this on a personal level? It's in several conscious and unconscious ways. It's in the way that I speak, it's in the clothes that I wear, it's the way I dance, it's the way I speak about Africa and Africans. It's the fact that I support where I can African culture and African art. It's all this deliberate and contrived things I do. I often gift friends Maasai shukets for their birthday. It's all these little things that I do in support of African culture, and so that can be my individual contribution. So I see myself as an unofficial ambassador for my family, for my country, and for the continent. Now the question is that, is this the role for Africans and for friends of Africa? Is it your responsibility? Just to address who is responsible for the narrative. If you don't beat your own drum, somebody else will come and beat it for you, and the tune that comes out may not reflect who you are. So in my view, it's our culture, we are the custodians of it. What we hear about African culture in the press, it's often about FGM, child brides, polygamy, with King Mswati of Botswana being the poster child for that, witchcraft. Now, in my personal view, FGM and child marriages are immoral, they're sinful, they're criminal, and polygamy often happens in a culture whereby women have got no say in it, and therefore it's oppressive and diminishing of women. But this is really far from the full story. And I have to refer back to Chimamanda Ngozi. She articulates really well the danger of the single story, which we read about in the press. Now, in recent times, we've not been so good at sharing our culture, and that could have been because of lack of infrastructure. But with the onset of social media, the world is shrinking, and therefore we have more avenues to promote and invest in our culture. And again, in my view, the leadership for this is individual as it is collective. And just to touch on one or two things that is not known about African culture, and I'll speak about Kenya because I'm Kenyan. So in the Kenyan society, we have something called Harambee. And this is community fundraising in terms of difficulty. And it's for education, for funerals, hospital expenses. We also have something else called chamas. And chamas are women's saving groups. And it's saving for a rainy day or for investment. Now, all these things are part of our culture and they were in existence before all these new sexy terms such as microfinance, revolving funds, crowdfunding. These things are authentically African. And it shows that our culture is one of generosity. We're resourceful, we're benevolent. It's not what you hear in the press, all the sensational stuff. Now, I spoke about FGM, and FGM is not the only rite of passage into adulthood in Africa. Young men and women in Africa, then and now, are prepared for adulthood. Men are taught about family values, responsibility as fathers and husbands. None of this baby father stereotype. This has got nothing to do with African culture, and perhaps just an erosion of it. Teenage girls and young women are taught about caring for their home, dealing with the joys, challenges of being wives, of being mothers. They're taught how to deal with loving in-laws who can sometimes behave like outlaws. They're taught to be involved in community projects. They're taught about grooming, about deportment, dangers of premarital sex, even about giving and receiving sexual pleasure. And all this is part of the initiation process. It encourages community because all the initiates are trained together. And that means throughout their lives, they then look out for each other. And that's why things like Harambee and chamas are possible in the African context. If we look at how our culture has been eroded, there's the controversial wife inheritance of widows by male relatives of the deceased. Now, this was begun initially to provide for the widows and the children. But you know, people are people and there's been abuse. So sometimes it's good to dig a little bit deeper just to see what the culture is. And so I've spoken about, you know, a lot of interesting things. You can't talk about African culture without talking about music. Mama Africa has got fantastic music. There are Japanese scholars in universities who are learning about Lingala, about Rumba. That's how powerful our music is. The music of my father's generation, Tabule, William Bell, Franco, all those are still relevant and well loved now. Fali Ipupa is one of the nominees. You can't forget about Kofi Olomide, Fela Kuti from Nigeria. That rhythmic beat, those political messages, the satire. Angelique Kidjo, social activist. I dare you to go to any of Angelique's concerts and not, you know, stand up to your feet uninhibited by that movement or that African drum. And African music is evolving. We have Genge in East Africa. Afrobeats is something new. And there are loads of new young guns, Yemi Alade, Wizkid. It's big, big business. We're told it's about to overtake Nollywood in terms of financial gain. If you talk about music, you have to talk about dance. I already touched on the Rumba. You also the videos of Obama when he was in Kenya, dancing our local dance Ripala with a local group called Sauti Soul. Shoki. Have you tried the shoki? If you haven't, by the end of the evening, you should try it. Azonto became a worldwide phenomenon. Our culture is evolving and growing. It's getting richer. It's not being taken away from. If you have a moment, Google Chakacha. Chakacha is a Kenyan dance, Kenyan and Tanzanian dance. Those waist movements, belly dancing, cannot touch us. This is about African culture. We have storytelling. Storytelling has preserved our history, it has taught culture, has entertained the listeners, and stretched the imagination of the narrators. It has served to educate and guide. Beautiful proverbs. I remember a friend saying to me about an Igbo proverb, the lizard seeing that nobody would praise it, raised its long neck and praised itself. And these are all authentically African things. We have all these proverbs. They sound beautiful in Zulu, in Swahili, in Yoruba, in Twi. They lose something when they're translated, but not the meaning. The meaning remains the same. Now, this ancient art of storytelling, it kept our families together. It was usually grandparents in the evening by the fireside, sitting down, and in Kenya they would say hadithi, hadithi, and those committed would say hadithi joy. It's just story, story, and the audience would say story come. No TV, no internet, bonding. This has been replaced by bedtime stories from the Grimm's brothers, much favored by Disney. They're wonderful stories, but we have our own stories. Do your children know these stories? Do they know that I am the beautiful one, Namaya Malenya? Whatever your story is, whatever your clan is. Then you've got the modern wordsmiths, these contemporary African writers, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Wole Soyinka, Ali Mazrui, Chinua Achebe, Ama Alto Aido, Grace Ogot, John Osogo, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Fantastic. The art of African storytelling is alive and well. We've got bloggers like Biko Zulu. Art, ancient art, so beautiful and precious that when the colonialists left, they made off with it. It's sitting in galleries and museums all over the world. How many of you in this room know that there's a Kenyan artist, Magdalene Namaya Odundo, OBE, who sold the most expensive work of pottery ever at Sotheby's. It sold for 195,000 euros, almost $250,000 US, breaking her own previous record. At that same exhibition, there was an African mask that was sold for 5,411,000 euros. It's not in the press. I know this because I know one of the artists. How many of you have been to the African section of the British Museum or taken your children there? When you go to countries, when you go back to your countries on vacation, have you been to the local museums? Have you been to the playhouses? If you've been to New York, if you're in business, have you seen the wonderful wooden art of the Mali people, the Dogon? And so these are all things that we should bear in mind. And I'm finishing now, actually. I can see a big heading that says conclusion, so don't worry too much. And so I've asked questions about who is responsible for promoting, investing in African art. And my answer is that we should be responsible. And I leave you with probably one other thing I should say. There's financial gain to be made. There's been a lot of talk about business here. And sometimes maybe you don't have the capacity to invest too much time in culture, but there's business. There's fashion. Looking around this room, there's a lot of beautiful African print. Where is this print made? Made in Europe, made in China. We have our graphic designers. There's great opportunity. My own country, Kenya, we've got this Maasai shuka. If you see the Maasai warriors in this red fabric, Louis Vuitton has it parading on the catwalks. Why are we not promoting this to our children so it can be part and parcel of their culture, but also something beautiful to wear? And so, you know, a lot has been done. At the moment, there's Lagos Fashion and Design Week, and there are various of these going on in South Africa, in Kenya at various different times. We also have African Fashion Week in Kenya, in London. We have a lot of markets. But the thing is, do we have to wait for Fashion Week Or do we have to wait to go to Spitalfields before we can celebrate our own culture? And my question to you is, why do we have to copy other cultures? When ours is so beautiful, why be a copy when the original is better? Proudly African. Now, my favorite saying, and actually it's been mentioned by a lot of people, if you've been doing the rounds during Black History Month, that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. For me, that encapsulates what African culture is about. It's about togetherness. Thank you.